Welcome to the Dayna Show. And before I introduce my next guest, I would like to address something that people have been asking me. And they're asking me what the theme is of this podcast. And for most of the people that know me really well, you know that I'm a pretty positive person. But since October 7th, I'm finding it really hard to find reasons to smile. And I think that I'm not alone in this situation. We're just being bombarded with negative news on a daily basis. So I figured that I would try to inject a little positivity and light into our Israeli society by magnifying and showcasing the people who I feel have been have made positive contribution to Israeli society and to me. And with that, I would like to introduce my next guest, Steve Liebowitz HaKohen. Welcome to the Dayna Show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dayna. That was a lovely, lovely introduction. And I am blushing. I don't know if your camera can pick it up. But
I've never seen you blush, ever.
You make me blush sometimes.
Me?
Yes.
Okay.
Our conversations are always revealing. That's what I think.
You can have conversations with me that you can't have with most people.
Totally.
Why do you think that is?
Because you have a way of making a person, myself at least, feel comfortable, feel like I can tell you anything. It's not going to be shared with the world. Oh, wait a second. Are we sharing this with the world?
Okay.
Never mind. Let's have a different kind of a conversation.
Cool.
Okay.
I want to start off with talking about some of your accolades and some of your positive contributions to Israeli society. But first, I want to go way back. Well, I want to say first that you're a father of 5 children, grandfather of 9 Israeli children. Yeah. In total, you've created 14 lives that live in Israel. You were born in the 1950s.
1951.
1951.
I did make it into the 50s, yes.
51 in New York.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? You were born in New York, and you were part of the Beitar movement.
Yes, I was.
Right? You dabbled a little in the JDL, which we'll talk about a little bit too. Made Aliya in 74. You've been here for 50 frickin' years. I have no idea how you've done that.
50 years.
Work for the government. Work for Shamir, for Begin, for Rabin.
Menachem Begin was one of my first employers.
Right. And you have been a reporter for the IBA News and an executive producer. You are a reporter for ILTV.
I'm now promoted to be the news editor.
News editor,
yes.
Right? Okay. Yeah. And all the while, in 1988, you and a bunch of friends have started an organization called the AFI, which is American Football in Israel, which has now over 2,000 players, multiple teams all over the country, and with the help of Robert Kraft from the New England Patriots, helped build the new Kraft Stadium that we have in Jerusalem, as well as I'm sure other institutions in Israel. So, wow, Steve, thank you for all of that amazing contribution to this country, and I personally have felt the effects of it because my son was part of the football team.
Your son was a very good player in the Football League.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. If you'll allow me, I'd like to go back to the climate of the world and of world Jewry in the 70s, in the late 60s, early 70s. At the time, we have the Vietnam War, right?
Yeah.
We have an uprising in anti-Semitism, especially in the United States, right, in New York. Okay. And Golda Meir is the prime minister in Israel. And Israel at the time is also absorbing, I don't know what the word is, having multiple attacks.
Multiple fronts, yeah.
In 74, the year that you moved to Israel, we have the Ma'alot massacre, we have the Kiryat Shmona massacre, we have the TWA plane that was hijacked where over 90 people were killed, a plane that was going from Israel to Greece. So my question to you, you make Aliya in 74, after all of these things are going on, what was the atmosphere that you have lived in that gave you the push to live in Israel and to fight for Jewish causes?
Well, Dayna, there was a moment in 1967 when myself and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Jews around the United States took on an entirely different identity because of the impending Six-Day War that was about to be upon Israel, when we thought Israel could be wiped out. I was a secular Jew, a teenager, growing up in Queens. I had no clue whatsoever what Israel was. I had to open up an atlas in the library at school to see where Israel was, to find that tiny little speck on the map.
So it wasn't something that you were brought up with?
Not at all.
Your parents never talked about Israel?
Never. I mean, they kept me, I had to go to the synagogue for my bar mitzvah. They had a big fancy party in Leonard's. They actually had my sister and myself continuing on with some kind of a Hebrew high school thing that I was tortured into going to, because the only things I cared about was sports. I thought that I was going to be a professional baseball player because I thought it was my skill set athletically were most suited for that.
Cool.
But I also played football and I played basketball. I was on different teams and so on. I was never good enough to be a professional player, but I did think at some point, like any bar mitzvah boy, that when I grow up, I had a chance to own an NFL team, if not play on one. That's actually a line I've stolen from Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, who said that that's the time of the bar mitzvah, when the boy stands up and realizes there's more chance that he'll own an NFL team than playing on one. But when look, at that time, it was a heady time, because when we won that war in 6 days, suddenly, not only were we pro-Israel, not only did we suddenly have this identity, but suddenly we were part of a great victory. The whole world was celebrating, it seemed to us. Everyone was talking about the heroism of the Israeli troops capturing the Sinai and the Golan and Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and liberating all of those territories against all those threats. So it was a heady time. In 69, instead of going to Woodstock, you actually asked me if I was at Woodstock. I was not. I love the music. I'm stuck in the music of Woodstock. But fortunately for me, or let's say as fate would have it, I made my first trip to Israel in the summer of 1969. So I was not at Woodstock. Instead, I was at the Western Wall when the moon landing took place. And the impact of that on me, just being in Israel, I knew that that was the place that I needed to be. I wanted to make my life there. The following summer, I made a visit, spent a lot of time working on a kibbutz mostly and studying a little bit at Hebrew University, summer courses, and made my decision right then. I was going to move to Israel. And until I did, I was going to throw my life into the cause of the Jewish people.
Okay, so you go back to New York.
So I go back to New York after already deciding I am going to move to Israel.
Is that when you met Mayor Kahana?
Well, I went to university. I got there late because I was in Israel. And I got there late, and I'm standing in the registrar, and all the courses I wanted were taken. And suddenly, this guy yells out at me from behind the registrar, screams at me and says, "Hey, you, come up over here." Because at that time, the only time in my life when I came back from Israel, I was identifying so strongly that I put a small kippah on my head.
Okay.
So this guy also had a kippah on his head. And he called me over. His name is Bobby Brown. He lives in Israel. He lives in Tekoa. He's still, until today, one of my closest friends. He called me over, and he pushed me into all these different courses, got me into all the courses, pushed some other folks out, I guess. and said, okay, you and I are going to run the Jewish Student Union on this campus, and we're going to join the movement for Soviet Jewry. And for the next 4 years, we did that. We did a lot of mischief, a lot of activism, a lot of sit-ins, quite a bit of getting arrested. But I was involved in a group called Beitar. We were, you could say, a right-wing Zionist movement affiliated with Likud and Menachem Begin and so on. And I got to meet Begin in 1974 when he was visiting Israel, even before he had been prime minister. But, you know, we knew that we were going to do anything we had to get Jews out of the Soviet Union. Sharansky was sitting in prison. At that time, the establishment was drawing lines and saying, don't step over these lines. Don't make too much noise. The only one that was stepping over all the lines was Rabbi Kahana. And so for a brief period, Beitar and the JDL cooperated. I was actually, because of my journalistic skills, I was made the editor-in-chief of the first JDL newspaper that was called Never Again. I have a copy. I sat in the salami factory on 42nd Street with Kahana back in the day. I even have a photo of it.
Yeah, you showed me.
But it was a very short-lived relationship. We in Beitar felt that JDL was sending its folks to do things that were potentially harming people, and we drew a line at where we thought the laws should be broken, meaning chaining ourselves in, throwing marbles at the Bolshoi Ballet, doing crazy things for Soviet Jewry, but stopping short at doing anything that could potentially harm Soviets.
Well, I read that Kahana, when he was working for the Jewish press, that there was, in the late 60s and 68, there was a huge surge of anti-Semitism in New York, where there was a lot of looting going on, a lot of elderly people being harassed. And that's why one of the reasons that he founded the JDL. Did you encounter anti-Semitism in that period?
So I'll tell you what it was. Yes, because it was at the time of the New York teachers' strike. The Jewish teachers, led by Al Shanker, were calling a strike in the public school system, and people were anti-Semitically attacking him and the Jewish Union, which was controlled by many, many Jewish teachers in a mostly minority school system. And so there was a lot of anti-Semitism. There were also attacks on cemeteries at the time, and they would send out a group that they formed in JDL called the Chaya Squad, literally the animals. A bunch of unwashed, unkempt, tough Jews from Brooklyn, mostly second-generation Holocaust survivor kids that would go out and physically confront...
Rough people up.
Yeah, if necessary at the time.
How do you compare the anti-Semitism back then to what it's like now? And in parallel, what's going on in Israel now versus what was going on then as well? Because I've noticed a pattern that when chaos erupts in Israel, it directly affects the anti-Semitism in Chutz La'aretz. And when things are really crazy here, things start to get really crazy there. So I'm wondering if you see the parallel as well, and what you think the similarities and differences are from that time period to today.
Look, those days we had confrontations. We had confrontations, let's say, with the left side with the Black Panthers, the SDS, which was Students for Democratic Society. They were viciously anti-Israel, and there were confrontations. There were some physical fights, including some that I took part in. But we always felt then that we way outnumbered the numbers of people in the streets and at potential confrontation points where there were many, many more Jews in the streets willing to be confrontational than there were numbers of them at the time, at least in the places that I chose to go to and experienced.
So you think that the Jews in the diaspora now don't have balls like they used to?
I'll tell you an exception. I was out in California now, and I met with some of the people involved with the Persian Jewish community, and they chose to organize themselves and confront the anti-Israel, anti-Semite groups in UCLA. Those same people got out there and confronted people when they came into Pico Robertson neighborhood just a couple weeks ago. And there are Jews that are willing to do that. I do think that it's not a bad thing if a Jew...
It's self-defense.
Yes, there's no reason not to have a license for a weapon if you think you need it.
And that's one of the things that Kahana was stating also in his manifesto or whatever it was. He was saying that, you know, America's been good to the Jews have been good to America, but you're not protecting us, so we're going to go out now and start protecting ourselves.
When people come into the subways with masks on their faces, not for COVID, but to hide their identities and harass people for being Jewish and start shouting on the train, are there any Zionists in this train? That's just pure anti-Semitism that, in my point of view, has to be confronted with physical force. That's the line that's drawn. I'm not talking about, you know, when they come into a Jewish neighborhood, specifically go to a synagogue. I'm not talking about a campus and free speech and that kind of thing, because I'm very much in favor of free speech, and I've been a protester since I was 16, and I have broken the law, but I wouldn't send myself into a mosque to stage a protest because they're Muslims and so they might tend to be against Israel. I just wouldn't do that.
Now that you've been in the news and that you're so closely tied to the current events on a daily basis in Israel, and you've watched it through the years, and you've seen that through the years, nothing has really changed. As a matter of fact, things have probably gotten worse in terms of terrorism. I mean, we've just had like the worst terror attack almost ever.
Yeah, I think things did change.
Right?
Dramatically.
So what do you think that Israel could have done in the last 50 years to prevent this situation from happening again? And why do you think they haven't done it?
First of all, I sit here and take responsibility, like everyone should in my generation, for having misconceptions, for believing somehow that...
so that was my next question.
Yeah, we're responsible.
Is there left and right now? Is there a left and right party now?
Look, there were people that very much believed in the Oslo process, believed in bringing Arafat here, believed that there was a possibility of reaching peace with our Arab neighbors. And, you know, we all saw the first and the second intifadas, and we had that experience. And of course, it ended up destroying the left movement because people realized that that was a pipe dream, not possible. And now we see that the other option of essentially turning a blind eye to Hamas, allowing them to receive billions every year from Qatar and other places in order to keep them pacified, placated, not ready to attack us, having misconceptions about what they're capable of militarily, thinking that they're just, excuse me for saying, stupid Arabs that could never mount any kind of an attack. Myself and all of the other people of my generation are all responsible. I've been, talking that way about how we don't have to go to war. We just have to defend our borders. We have to keep them in their place.
And now what do you feel?
Now, I am basically, my bottom line has always have been a bitchonist, a person that first and foremost believes in security. And I think that Israel now has an existential threat on so many borders, and we have to first and foremost reestablish some real deterrence. In my point of view, and I'm not the military expert, but in terms of my emotion and what I would have done is that on October 8th, when they started firing at us from the north, I would have attacked Beirut. I would have thought, you don't sit back, allow Hezbollah to dictate to you what's going to be in the north, move your population out. We're now nearly 9 months later, 9 months of people having basically been forced in out of a security area along the Israeli border and not able to go home. It's intolerable to me. Obviously, the situation in the South is intolerable, but what I would not have done is called in the United States on day 2 of the war and had Biden standing here and all the rest. First, I would have won the war and then told the United States how it went, like we did in 1967.
Right. I wanted to ask you, part of Israel's tactical approach is their element of surprise
Yeah.
and their OCD-ness of keeping things hush hush and quiet. How much of what really goes on do we get from the news? Okay. And what are the percentages of things that happen, in your opinion, because I guess nobody really knows, of things that happen that is not talked about on the news?
I'll give you an example right now. The IDF senior officers are all talking, and we're all hearing, we meaning the journalists, but we're not writing about it, saying that there is no more war to fight in Gaza per se. We might as well just leave Hamas the way it is now, and we don't have enough weapons. We don't have enough shells for the tanks to finish the job and be ready to deal with Hezbollah. So when I'm hearing things like that, I'm not publishing it. I'm not writing about it, talking about it. What I'm saying instead is what our prime minister is saying and what our soldiers are doing on the ground. I'm reporting the facts. I'm not trying to blur this. I mean, can I say emphatically on the air to the world that we may not win this war? Hamas is indeed an ideology and an idea that can't necessarily be wiped out and physically totally replaced and defeated. Probably that's the case. And so,
So do we know or do we not know what's going on? Are there things that are going on behind the scenes that we're not being exposed to? I hope so. I'm
going to
so.
be cynical here, and I'm going to say something that may not be popular with some of your viewers. I think that it's all a matter of the political survival of Prime Minister Netanyahu. And I'm sorry to say it hurts me to say it. But I think that sometimes the decisions that have been made in recent months have not been made solely based on security considerations and practical considerations for us. And unless I have that confidence again, it makes it very difficult to sleep at night, because I don't know if we're making the right decisions, and I don't know what our plan is. I don't know what our post-Gaza plan is. I don't know what our plan is for the North. I don't know if we're planning to go to war or not, and I should know. And I know what officers are telling us. I know what people in the North are telling us, and I just
Well, you're not making me feel very calm right now.
Oh, so let me...
It's okay. I already don't feel calm, and I think that's part of the reason that I really...
That was part of the purpose of your broadcast.
Yeah,
you wanted to make people feel
because I think I just feel so frustrated. I feel so helpless and so hopeless, and all I hear every day is soldiers dying, another one, another family that's been destroyed.
So let me tell you the good news.
Tell me the good news. I hope it's really good.
Until October 6th, there were close to 2,000 people playing football in this country, including about 600 playing tackle football. 400 of them, a higher number than in any other sport in the country, on October 7th reported to duty either in the North or the South. So obviously you couldn't have a football season. The high schoolers, though, all they didn't have was coaches. They had plenty of players. Christians from the United States, Christian coaches, got on airplanes, flew over here, joined those teams, helped those teams to get through the season. And a few weeks ago, we had a championship game with 1,000 kids standing out at Kraft Family Sport Campus, able to do something normal for 3 hours. We can have normal life. We can try to be happy. I think all of us have a place in our hearts and our minds on a daily basis that are watching what's happening in the news, because you have to be, deaf and dumb to not. We all have family and friends and so on that are inside now and that are risking their lives all the time. But we also have to realize that we have kids that are going through this for the first time, kids that are very inexperienced and that are having to deal with war. We have to be confident for them.
Right.
Our high schoolers that are never going to have their high school years back and that are going to be facing the Army, we have to make sure that they get to play their championship football season. And we have to make sure that our people remain resilient. That's been the secret, I think, to us not completely collapsing after October 7th, and that's the people have just rallied, have stepped forward, have been willing to, do whatever is necessary to get through this.
Since I made Aliya, I don't know if you felt this way, but you've been living here for a really long time, but I always felt like there was some secret that was being passed around amongst Israelis that I wasn't aware of. There was something going on, some secret to living here, some shortcuts on how to get through difficult times. And I felt like, I didn't understand their mentality. I didn't understand their reactions to things. And I think it took up until the war for me to start putting the pieces together and to realize that moving forward, maintaining a daily routine is not something that you should do, but it's something that you have to do, and you don't have a choice. And it's like every time, I see another soldier that's being killed, I freeze. And it's like, I don't know what I should do now. I'm not used to that emotion. I don't know how to digest that kind of information, especially in the frequency that it's coming at me. And you see Israelis the next day after the 300 missiles were shot towards Israel. The next day, 6:00 in the morning, in their car, on the way to work, people are just getting on with their day. And
But how many times have you driven to work, listening to the radio, listening to the news, and just have tears coming down your eyes as you're driving? It's happened to me a bunch of times.
I think everybody has a different coping mechanism. I think sometimes you can put up a wall, sometimes you have to let it in, but I'm talking about in general. I think that the will to survive and to move on is incredible. The Israeli spirit is something that I used to look at as annoying. But now I'm really impressed, and I look to that as an example. And when I think of things that people do on a daily basis, I think about people like you who provide opportunities, especially for kids, even though it's for adults as well. Football, American football. And I want you to tell me why, in '88, when you brought it here, was your goal for it to evolve to what it is today?
So let me, putting on my other hat just for this moment.
Can I wear it?
Sure.
You didn't bring me any merch? Dude, come on.
That's the Kraft family
Bring
hat.
the merch. Is it clean?
It's pretty clean.
Okay. How do I look?
So it was actually a pirate illegal operation that started football. It wasn't meant to start football. There was no intention. What it was is we had no way to watch the games of the NFL, MLB, and NBA. You know what those initials all are? All right. The viewers know if you don't. So to be able to watch professional sports, we couldn't in Israel. How did we know what happened in games? We would buy the Jerusalem Post and read about it the next day. There was no internet. There was no nothing. So what do? Well, in 1988, 89, at the government press office building on Hillel Street in Jerusalem, they put in a satellite dish from Armed Forces Television, and it was able to receive stations. And one of the stations that it received was all of the TV, all of the games, all the championship games. So my friend Danny Gwartz and I rented out an office space in that building and brought in a bunch of chairs and a bunch of TVs, and we set up those TVs, and we started showing games and charging people 20 shekels. And so hundreds of people would come for NFL games in the middle of the night. This is in 1988 in Jerusalem. And a lot of them also wanted to play the game. There already was softball, and there was plenty of basketball in the country, but there was no football, and it was football season. So we organized the guys. At first it was a flag football, a touch football league. We had like 8 teams and 50 guys. And it just started growing and growing and growing because I loved the game. And at a certain point, I realized that I can become the person that brought American football to this country. And so I just kept going. And now it's 98, 08, 18. It's like 35 years later.
Well, you
36.
know that I'm like a really big fan of physical activity.
Oh, yes.
You know? And besides, the way it makes you look, any kind of sport is good for your mental and physical health. And I'm wondering if the games are still on. Is this business as usual now during the war as it was before?
So before October 6th,
Yeah.
of course. So we got back to playing. Our national team is even in action. Not only is
How many teams do you have now?
we have now about 20 tackle football teams from the north to the south. That's from all the way, north of Haifa, Carmiel, and all the way down to Beersheba, high school teams, adult teams, and so on. On October 6th, most of our national team players from our flag team were playing, preparing for the World Championships. They were number 3 in Europe, and everything was looking good. October 7th, most of them reported for the Army, and they were there for most of that time. They started getting out of the Army. We started preparing them. We sent them to Europe. Now, to the biggest tournament in Europe, it's called the Big Bowl.
Okay.
Now, because of the security situation, they asked us not to call the team Team Israel. So we sent 2 teams of national team players in order to get them all ready. And instead of calling it Team Israel, we had 2 teams, so we called one Team Ariel and the other Team Kfir for the Bibis children. Well, Team Ariel won the championship. So we had players that were in Gaza on Wednesday. On Friday, they were playing in this tournament.
Wow.
On Monday, 2 players. On Monday, 2 players that were back inside Gaza after winning the toughest tournament in Europe. These same players, the best of them, are going to be competing this summer in Helsinki in the World Championship. And flag football, believe this or not, Dayna, is going to the Olympics in 2028 in Los Angeles. So I've been to the States.
That's already the done deal?
Done deal. Done deal. Nobody knows in Israel because it became official about a week after the start of the war. So for 6 months, we didn't even talk about it. I didn't ask for any help. I didn't start really preparing much. Now I've gone to the States. I met Mr. Kraft. I met Mr. Wilf, the owner of the Vikings. We're getting support from them and from other donors. And we're planning to send our men and women, to the LA Olympics. If we're good enough, we're going to be there. That would be the fulfillment of my dream, my career in football.
That's incredible. And you are almost single-handedly responsible for bringing flag football to
No,
the Olympics.
Absolutely not. I have a very strong board of directors. You know one of them. His name is Yona Mishan.
Okay.
You've heard of him. He's the vice president.
I know him a little bit.
You know him a little bit?
Yeah.
He's my sidekick, Danny Gwertz.
No, I'm not saying that anything was single-handed. I mean, though, there was just, it was, you
Coaches,
were really a driving force because anyone who knows you knows that you live and breathe football.
I live and breathe football. I love sports in general. I was a pitcher in the softball league here until I was 60, one of the winningest pitchers on a really good team. So I'm a crazy sports fanatic in general. That's how I survived the war, is that every day I spend at least 2 hours, usually late at night, watching U.S. sports, either baseball, football, or basketball.
Talk to me a little bit about Robert Kraft's involvement in Israel at this time and his support for Israel at this time.
Robert Kraft is also extremely involved in the whole issue of anti-Semitism. He's headed a charitable organization with the Blue Boxes, and I was at his facility in Foxborough some months ago. When you walk into the football stadium in Foxborough, you go up to the 4th floor, the entire section of the building is devoted to online monitoring of anti-Semitism worldwide. He has these workers there that are keeping track of each and every anti-Semitic peep around the world because he cares and because he can. But what is his motivation? Is he planning on doing something about it? He's been spending a fortune in the fight against anti-Semitism. He had Super Bowl ads. He's had campaigns on television. Basically just pleading with people to not hate Jews. I mean, which is an irrational ideology.
Do you think that he's felt some kind of a loss, that he's been attacked anti-Semitically since the war started?
I don't know about that. I do know that since October 7th, since the war started, he has been devoted to helping Israel. I know that he and his family have been doing a lot. I don't want to go into all of the details because I don't know how much they want me to say about it. But they and many Jewish families, wealthy Jewish families across the United States, have been pouring out support for Israel since October 7th, certainly. And Mr. Kraft is an ardent supporter of this country.
Well, I definitely appreciate his contribution. I think it's really, really incredible. I'm like I said, a big fan of anything that has to do with sports. And I think that especially during this time, having that outlet for boys and girls, because you have women's teams as well, is just, it's a medication.
It's a great sport.
It's
a team
treatment.
sport. We used to think of it as great preparation for the Army with guys, coming in, and the teamwork and the strategy and the physicality and all of the rest of it. We lost four players during the war. 2 at the rave concert, 1 on the border in Gaza, and 1 during the war, a few months into the war.
Wow, that's horrible.
Yeah, young men. And, and their teams held memorials in their honor and their memory, and the season went on.
I want to go back for a second to the news. And I want your opinion on what is the most trustworthy station, Israeli Hebrew station, news station in Israel.
Oh, you're going to get me in a lot of trouble.
Yalla, go.
The one that I watch Hebrew-wise is Channel 12. I think that they have the best commentators and reporters. I watch it on television-wise, I watch it. But 2 hours a day at least, from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., I have Khan radio on. It's the same folks that I used to work with at IBA, Aliya Golan, and some of the others. I trust them implicitly to bring me the news. So I listen to Khan Radio and Channel 12 TV.
Why is there a discrepancy between different radio stations on the truth?
Radio stations or the TV stations?
Well, I guess that's the same, right?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, I suppose the TV stations, there's 3, and now there's a 4th, because I understand that I-24 is also broadcasting in Hebrew starting this week.
So why do people twist the truth? And how does the public know what the truth really is?
I have a son that when he comes home immediately turns on Channel 14, which is a right-wing
yeah, I've watched
station.
it too, but it's just too much screaming and yelling.
Too much screaming and yelling. He puts it on, he says, to hear what the other side has to say, to hear the argument. But just the same way that in America, I know people who, you walk in their house, doesn't matter what time, day or night, all that it's on TV is Fox News, screaming at them, with right-wing politics from the U.S., but there are also people that will have MSNBC, and people want to be reinforced for their own ideas. They want to have people saying things that they like them to say. I try to go to places where I think people are going to tell me things that I don't necessarily want to hear, but that are as truthful and based on fact as possible, because otherwise, how can I turn around and write things and say things and do things that are responsible if I'm basing half of what I'm thinking on, nonsense?
Right. Well, I wanted to just say that I appreciate that you do honest news reporting.
Well,
and
but from an Israeli perspective,
right.
meaning, everyone who watches, and I look at all the commentary of all the people that watch, most of them are just saying praise Jesus and love anything that we do. It doesn't matter what we do, but they also realize, and I think viewers should realize, this is coming from an Israeli perspective. Right. And I know that there's a lot of Palestinian suffering that I am not reporting on fully.
Right. it is biased towards our view.
Our suffering.
Right. So we were talking about honest news reporting, and I was asking you why different news stations have different views, and what news station was the one to listen to.
All you have to do is figure out who owns the station and follow the money. The owners have political viewpoints. The owners of Fox have political viewpoints.
Yeah, but when it comes to the war, we want facts. We want facts. We want to know. I don't want to know anyone's viewpoint. I don't think anyone wants to know. We want to know about our soldiers. We want to know about our security. We want to know, are we moving forward? Are we reaching our goal? What's happening with the hostages? Like, what movement is being taken for those things to happen? And it seems like we can't get a straight answer from anybody.
Well, then you should have a crystal ball to look into, because apparently we don't have straight answers. We've been told about total victory by our leaders since October 7th. We've been told about the coming obliteration of Hamas, quickly and easily. About no aid is going to go in, no gas is going to go in, no supplies. Meanwhile, we are in charge of the humanitarian aid now because we've controlled the Philadelphia route. We are responsible for trying now. And the latest thing is that because of the backup in the sewage, there's going to be disease because of all of the heat. And so now we are rebuilding and allowing the rebuilding of an electric plant on the border in Gaza so that the
sewage will be...
Not the sewage, but the water where it changes it, what do they call it? When they change salty water into clean water.
Filtration.
Yeah. So in order to get that up and running, you have to have power. And so we're allowing a power station to be built in Gaza, in the middle of the war. So are we fighting the war to win it?
I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. So what happens is that in this day of social medias, there are WhatsApp groups of all sorts. And so officers and reservists and others get involved, get their information mostly not from, or a lot of it, not from the news. I don't know how many times during this war I received information in private WhatsApp messages that wasn't yet out there publicly, just known to the public.
Do you feel safe walking around?
I wouldn't go today to the north, without flak jacket and so on, to the border. I wouldn't go to the south, certainly. Everywhere else in the country, I feel as safe as I ever did.
Have you been reporting in Gaza?
No, I have not. I'm too old.
What do you mean outside? What about in Notef?
No, I've been working mostly from the studio and from home. The reporters that did go did not do anything meaningful. The only meaningful reporting, military reporting, that can be done in my point of view is not to show yourself sort of standing somewhere that looks cool, but the soldiers that go inside, the reporters that actually go inside, embedded with the troops. Now, back in the day, in 1982, when I worked for the government, I would go in with reporters on a regular basis into the war with Lebanon in 82. Today, I'm 72 years old. I'm not going in with reporters, with the troops. I have grandchildren that won't let me. I have children that won't let me. And I personally don't feel like I could, duck quickly enough to be an effective military reporter inside. But I did do my reserve duty until I was 48, until they stopped sending me. So I spent quite a bit of time in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria and on the northern border and even inside Lebanon. But that was years ago, years and years.
Let's switch our focus a little bit, because we do have a little bit more time. So I do want to talk about some funner things.
Okay.
You've been married a bunch of times. And
bunch.
Well, way more than me. Well, you were married 3 times. Yes. You're a widower and twice a divorcee, right?
Yeah.
And now you're single. Ladies, he's single.
Yeah. But I do like women.
Well, I'm not saying that you're gay or
No.
anything. Okay, I wasn't implying that you're gay.
But I am happily a bachelor. I don't really feel like I'm missing being in a relationship, as it were.
When did that switch happen?
Well, circumstances happen sometimes. I remember during COVID, it was really, nice to be cohabiting with someone who was a really good friend at the time. And, we weren't married or whatever, but it just seemed like a bad time to be by yourself, stuck in a house.
It was a good time to have somebody
around.
Yeah, it was a great time to have somebody.
Look, I married a woman who was my second wife, and I thought she was the love of my life. We were married for 20 years. She passed away. She had cancer. Her name was Drora. We had one child together. We each brought 2 kids. It was yours, mine, and ours. So we had 5. Mikey's now 30. And he has kept this entire family really tight together. She's Iraqi. So the Iraqi side of the family and the Amerikaki side of the family have merged into beautiful brown children. And
So you're now single and you don't really, it doesn't really bother you.
But I do try to date.
You do?
I don't go on dating sites because I'm afraid people are going to know me on those sites.
Oh, you think you're too famous?
I'm on TV a lot. So and I'm in the football world. I don't want.
Oh, really? That's the excuse nowadays? Because you think you're too famous?
It's not about being famous.
Recognizable?
Yes, I'm a public person. I represent the football federation, football community in Israel. I can't do anything
you feel like you have an image to uphold,
yes,
and
like
being on a dating site is bad for your image?
I think it would, wouldn't it?
Why?
I don't know.
You're a person, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just that it's such a small world of the Jewish.
Okay, so how do you meet chicks? Let's hear.
I'm not really good at it these days.
Really?
I just go about my life, and when I meet a friend of mine introduced me to someone not that long ago, an old friend from America, and so I did that dating scene, and it was nice. If the right woman came along, I would be happy to go. Why are we talking about this?
Because I'm interested. And I'll tell you. I mean, one of the things that.
Here's a good one. And I'm gonna even say it in public, that I was at a party. Yeah, I guess I can say this. I was at a party for one of my grandkids, and my ex-wife, my first wife. We have a lot of parties together, and I think we're friends these days, and we're get along fine. But afterwards, she called me on the side and asked me if I was seeing anyone these days. She's married happily, and she just asked me if I was seeing anyone, and I said no. And she then asked if it would be okay to introduce me to any of her friends, and I said no, because it just didn't seem like the right thing, an ex-wife introducing, but that just could be me.
I want to know what it's like dating at your age now.
I don't know. I'm not really, out there dating per se. It's more like if it happens, it happens. I'm not in a hurry. I'm not feeling any pressure. It's like when people get to be, in their late 20s, early 30s, they're not married yet. Maybe they feel pressure and they got to get, meet somebody and get married.
You put a V on all of the boxes already.
I don't feel any pressure to be in a relationship like that. I feel like being single gives me a certain freedom to, be out at football meetings, be up watching games whenever I feel like, not have to worry about, somebody that would rather be having.
Being single gives me a lot of freedom too.
Okay, well, there you go. So you know what I'm talking about.
And I feel like maybe too much so that I don't feel like I put enough effort into dating because I'm just so comfortable being alone. I feel like I'm, besides like the obvious things that I don't have, I have everything. Like I'm content. I'm really content. And I think that that's a good thing and a not good thing, because I think the natural progression of life is to be with someone, to grow old with someone.
Is it?
I don't know. I always thought so.
See, I would think something else. I would think that the natural thing would be to be with several people. Like all of you growing old together. And then if one dies, okay, you lost that one, but you've got another one. 2 or 3 or 4.
1 second. I'm not saying that I that's what I want. I'm just saying that I always grew up thinking that you grow old and you grow old as a married couple, and you grow old and die together.
Because of loneliness, potential of loneliness.
Yeah, because when you're older, it's much harder to take care of yourself. And when you have a ben or bat zug, then it's like one kind of takes care of the other. But
It's like you want someone else to have a relationship so someone else can help take care of you.
No, but not just take care of you, but like, listen, I'm really happy being single the way that I am. But it doesn't mean that there aren't times where I want to have somebody around to share like really happy news or really sad news, or just to, dump on, it's natural to want to have some kind of partner. I'm not saying that.
I think the best thing is to have really, really close friends that can, come and sleep over sometimes. That in my view, is the perfect situation. And
for a woman or for a man?
No, for relationships in general.
Oh, so you don't think that? First of all, you don't believe in monogamy.
I didn't say that. That's
your ultimate situation is a non-monogamous relationship.
First of all, I'm speaking at this point in my life and my view of the world, and in terms of what I think is the natural state of things. I don't think the natural state of things is for one man and one woman to live together all of their lives and grow old together and like that. I think it becomes kind of.
But when you get older, okay, I'm not talking about now, but when you're at a point where you're not functioning at your best, okay, wouldn't you prefer to have like a good friend sitting next to you, and instead of like arranging to meet new people, it's like at some point in your life you get that whole variety gets a little bit boring.
I don't know. I think they might look at me and think I'm, they might start to think I'm being pathetic or something, like, can't you walk a little faster, honey?
I already say that to you.
Can't you move a little bit better, honey?
I also don't really think that monogamy is realistic, quoting Amy Schumer. And that I think that I think like the past like 15 years of my life, I've met some really, really incredible people that I wouldn't have met if I was in a monogamous relationship. I've had some really interesting experiences, and I don't regret it for a second.
Because they weren't necessarily people you'd want to spend your entire life with, but
Absolutely
who you
not.
would like to, you are glad that you had that period with them, that experience with them.
For sure.
And in most cases.
And honestly, like I'm not really a one night stand kind of girl. And I think that all of the guys that I've slept with we've connected on a different level as well. Like I like them as well. I don't know if it was like, right away that we clicked, but there was something about them, something special that I thought that they had about them other than just my attraction for them or their physical appearance. And I hope that they kind of feel the same way about me. I mean, I've had like.
But isn't that always the case in those first weeks, in that first moments, the spark, the period?
I was in a situationship,
situationship. That's not
for
a word.
about almost 5 years. And every single time that I saw this individual, I had parparim. From this
butterflies.
Every single time. I don't know if that means that you're in love or you're infatuated. I don't know exactly what it means.
It's a great feeling, though,
but
right?
It's an incredible feeling.
I haven't felt that feeling in quite a number of years.
Well,
but I remember that it exists.
It does exist, and I don't think it's too late. And I hope that you actually find it.
Really?
Yeah, I do. And Steve Liebowitz, he's a famous bachelor.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to get in touch with him can contact me.
Yeah.
But I want to really thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart for spending this hour with me and for coming here after your regular day job.
Most fun times I've had in since October 7th.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Are you serious?
Well, it's been a pretty depressing time. It's not like there's been a whole lot of positive
Everything
highlights.
is relative. So I just hope that, the next time we see each other, the country at least will be in a different
I
situation.
hope I'll see you more often than it has been since the start of the war. You've
I
been
hope
busy
so, too.
driving your ambulance and doing all the rest of the things you do, and I've been busy news casting.
I hope things calm down, and I hope that we get to celebrate lots of happy times
Amen.
together.
Amen.